Hello friends, I am Shantanu, your coach, and now we are going to start the fourth chapter of GST series, that is Introduction to CGST Act 2017. First, let's see the study objective, that is the topics which we are going to cover under this chapter. First, we will look at the Central Goods and Service Tax Bill 2017. And then we will see a brief introduction of the CGST Act 2017, including the schedules in it. Then we are going to see the important definitions. These definitions are very, very important. Question can be asked on these. And please remember that whatever study material provided by the institute, you have to refer that, but you should not be dependent on that, because the institute itself has said that you have to check all the content of the study material through external sources. So we are doing the thorough study of the study material. We are checking and cross-checking with external sources also. So for example, the definitions which are given under the study material, they haven't mentioned the proper sections of these definitions. Apart from this, there are certain other important definitions also which are missing from this study material, and we are going to cover those definitions also, apart from all the definitions which are given under the study material. Apart from definitions, we are going to see the levy of GST, how the CGST will be levied under this act. Then the dual nature of this CGST and the liability under GST, that is who is liable to pay the GST, and also another important item, that is the composition scheme for small taxpayers. And very important definition of aggregate turnover, which is related to composition scheme. This definition we are also going to see towards the end. Now let's talk about the Central Goods and Service Tax Bill 2017. The GST Council, so the main body, as we have already studied, GST Council is the main body under this GST regime. This GST Council in its 11th meeting held on 4th of March 2017 has approved the draft Central GST Bill for levying and collection of tax on intra-state supply of goods and services, or both, by the central government. So the main important thing which you have to note is that this bill basically talks about the levy and collection of tax on इंट्रा-स्टेट सप्लाई ऑफ गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज, यानी एक स्टेट के अंदर ही अंदर अगर कोई गुड्स या सर्विसेज सप्लाई होते हैं तो उसके ऊपर ये टैक्स लगेगा, उसका नाम रहेगा CGST। और ये जो टैक्स लगेगा, इट विल बी लेविड एंड कलेक्टेड बाय द सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट। नाउ एज यू आर ऑलरेडी अवेयर दैट bill becomes the act once it is approved by the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, that is lower and upper houses of the parliament, and also get the assent of the president. So this bill was presented in the Lok Sabha on 27th of March 2017. 2017 तो आपको याद रखने की जरूरत नहीं है क्योंकि सभी जगह 2017 है। ओनली डेट आपको याद रखना है, एज ए 27 मार्च को प्रेजेंट हुआ था बिल इन द लोकसभा। विद इन 2 days 29th मार्च 2017 को ये लोकसभा में अप्रूव हो गया, यानी पास हो गया, एंड राज्यसभा ऑल्सो पास दिस ऑन 6th of April, and it also got the assent of the president on 13th of April 2017. From exam point of view, these dates are important, so you have to remember GST Council ने जो अप्रूव किया था 11th मीटिंग में किया था, अपनी 4th मार्च को किया था, यानी वो मीटिंग हुई थी 4th मार्च को। उसके बाद इट वॉज प्रेजेंटेड इन द लोकसभा ऑन 27th of March, 29th को लोकसभा ने अप्रूव कर दिया था, 6th April को इट वॉज अप्रूव्ड बाय द राज्यसभा, एंड इट गॉट द एसेंट ऑफ द प्रेसिडेंट on 13th of April. Now let's see the definition of the term adjudicating authority. First, we will see the definition from exam point of view, and then we will see some explanation on it. Adjudicating authority is defined under clause 4 of section 2, and it means any authority which is appointed or authorized to pass any order or decision under this act, but does not include, तो ये exclusions आपको specifically याद रखना है कि these are not treated as adjudicating authority. Central Board of Excise and Custom, not an adjudicating authority. Then Revisional Authority is not an adjudicating authority. Then Authority for Advance Ruling or Appellate Authority for Advance Ruling or Appellate Authority and the Appellate Tribunal will not be treated as adjudicating authority. Now let's see some explanation to this term adjudicating authority. कोई भी act होता है, whenever there is an act need to be implemented, and for implementing this act there should be some officers who should have certain power to pass order and to take decision. They can inspect or investigate the things to implement the act. For this, out of so many officers of the department, certain officers are provided with the power to pass the order and to take the decisions, and these are called adjudicating authority. These are also called as quasi-judicial authority. Quasi-judicial because certain powers are similar to which are provided to the courts, but these are not courts. There are to certain extent they have the power of court. However, these authority may misuse these powers also, and for this purpose, if any order or decision is given by the adjudicating authority, a person can file an appeal against such order. Within the department also, there is a system of appeals like appellate authority or appellate tribunal where the appeal can be filed against such orders or decisions of the adjudicating authority. And if the person is not satisfied with the order passed under appeal, then the person will have a power to move to the High Court or Supreme Court in certain cases. So let's recap once again what are the questions which can be asked on this term. First of all, they can ask the section under which it is defined. Next thing, they can ask whether adjudicating authority is a quasi-judicial body. So answer is yes. Another question which can be asked is, out of so many, which are not adjudicating authority? So you have to remember these exclusions which are not treated as adjudicating authority. Another question which they can ask, whether adjudicating authority has power to pass order or to take decision, or to pass both order or take decision. So you have to remember that authority, that is adjudicating authority, has power to pass any order or take decision under this act. Now, as I have already mentioned so many times that knowledge is important, but application of knowledge is more important. So again, we are going for a small test where I will be asking 2 questions based on whatever we have studied, and you have to answer those questions correctly. Let's see the question number 1. Under CGST Act 2017, activities or transactions which shall be treated neither as supply of goods nor a supply of services are mentioned under. There are 4 options. Option A, Schedule 1. Option B, Schedule 2. Option C, Schedule 3. And option D, none of the above. I'm giving 5 seconds to answer. So the correct option is option C, that is Schedule 3, where activities or transaction which are treated as neither supply of goods nor supply of services are mentioned. As Schedule 1, we have seen that it talks about the activities which will be treated as supply even without consideration. And Schedule 2 talks about activities or transaction which shall be treated as supply. Now let's move to question number 2. Under CGST Act 2017, the term adjudicating authority is defined under There are four options. Option A, clause 4 of section 2. Option B, clause 2 of section 4. Option C, subsection 4 of section 2, and option D, subsection 2 of section 4. I am giving you 5 seconds to answer it correctly. So the correct answer is option A, that is adjudicating authority is defined under clause 4 of section 2. Now let's see the definition of business which is defined under 217. This is very important definition because GST will get attracted whenever there is a supply in relation to a business. For example, if father is residing in Mumbai and he sends a car to his son in Delhi. Now, this is not in relation to any business, so GST would not be attracted. On the other hand, if the principal is supplying the car to the agent, then it is in relation to the business, so that it will attract the GST. Definition of business is given as inclusive definition because it starts with the it includes. So all these activities will be treated as business without any doubt, and apart from these activity also certain other activity may be covered under the scope of business. Now the list is long, you have to remember the keywords. The first point says that any trade, commerce, manufacture, profession, vocation, adventure, wager or any other similar activity, whether or not it is for pecuniary benefit. So आप बेनिफिट के लिए काम कर रहे हैं, प्रॉफिट अर्न करने के लिए या नहीं, it doesn't matter. If it is related to trade, commerce, etc., it will be treated as business. Second point further says that any activity transaction in connection with or incidental or ancillary to subclause A will also be treated as business. Third point say activity transaction in nature of subclause A, whether or not there is a volume, frequency, continuity, regularity of such transaction. This is also very important point. इसका मतलब यहाँ पर है कि वॉल्यूम डजंट मैटर, कि कितने अमाउंट का आपका ट्रांजैक्शन है, इट डजंट मैटर. फ्रीक्वेंसी ऑल्सो डजंट मैटर, हाउ फ्रीक्वेंटली यू आर डूइंग सच ट्रांजैक्शन डजंट मैटर. देन कंटिन्यूटी, वेदर यू आर डूइंग दिस ट्रांजैक्शन कंटिन्यूअसली और नॉट, इट डजंट मैटर. सो इवन आइसोलेटेड ट्रांजैक्शन, single transaction may fall under the term business. Similarly, regularity of such transaction is also not important. Next point says that supply or acquisition of goods. So whenever you are supplying or acquiring any goods, including capital goods and services in connection with the commencement or closure of business. So even when you are just commencing your business, you are acquiring any goods or services will fall under the business. Although you are about to start your business. So for example, if a person has purchased a coffee machine to establish a coffee shop, he is about to commence his business. Since the acquisition of coffee machine is in connection with the commencement of the business, this acquisition of coffee machine, that is a capital good, will be covered by the term business. Similarly, provision by a club, association, society or any such body for subscription or any other consideration of the facility or benefits for its member will fall under the term business. Similarly, the admission for a consideration of person to any premises. You might have seen that in certain premises, if you go, there will be an entry fees for admission to that premises. Such activity of admission for entry fee will be treated as business. Similarly, services supplied by a person as a holder of an office which has been accepted by him in the course or furtherance of his trade, profession or vocation will also fall under the term business. Similarly, the services provided by a race club by way of totalisator or a license to the bookmaker in such club will also be treated as business. Here the totalizer means a device which give you the count of beds. Further, it says that any activity or transaction undertaken by the center, state government or any local authority in which they are engaged as a public authority. So, if central government, state government, local authority is doing any activity where it is engaged as a public authority, will also be treated as business. Another important term which is defined under CGST Act is business vertical, and it is very important definition. It is defined under 218 and it means a distinguishable component of an enterprise. So if this is an enterprise, a distinguishable which you can distinguish from other component of the enterprise, which is engaged in supply of individual goods or services. For example, it is involved in production of let's say fan, or it says that or a group of related goods or services. Either it is engaged in supply of individual goods or services or a group of related goods or services which is subject to risk and return that are different from those of the other business verticals. So suppose in this enterprise there is a air conditioning division which is producing the ACs and there is another division which is producing fans. The risk and returns are different, then it will be treated as, both these will be treated as business verticals. However, they have given explanation to the term related. For the purpose of this clause, the factor that should be considered to determine whether goods or services are related, it includes the nature of goods or services, the nature of production process, the type or classes of customer for the goods or services, and the method used to distribute the goods or supply of services, and the nature of regulatory environment wherever it is applicable, including the banking, insurance, public utilities, etc. So these are the factors you must consider for determining whether these are related goods or services or not. Now let's see the term capital goods defined under 219. It means goods the value of which is capitalized in the books of account of the person claiming the input tax credit, and which are used or intended to be used in the course of or furtherance of the business. So to check whether a good is capital good or not, you have to check two things. First, value, whether it is capitalized in the books of account of person claiming the input tax credit or not. And secondly, you have to check whether it is used or intended to be used for the furtherance of the business. Both the conditions should be satisfied to treat goods as capital goods. Now let's see the definition of the term continuous supply of goods. This is very important definition also. It is defined under 232. It means a supply of good which is provided or agreed to be provided continuously or on a recurrent basis under a contract, whether or not by means of wire, cable, pipeline or other conduit, and for which the supplier invoices the recipient on a regular or periodic basis, and includes supply of such goods as government may, subject to certain conditions, may specify in this behalf by notification. So the key word you have to remember, there should be a contract in relating to this continuous supply of goods. It should be provided, the goods supplied should be continuously or recurrent basis, and the supplier issues the invoices to the recipient on regular or periodic basis. Another definition is of continuous supply of service, which is very similar to continuous supply of goods. It is defined under 233. The only difference between continuous supply of service and goods is that in case of a continuous supply of services, such services should be supplied for a period exceeding 3 months with a periodic payment obligation. So if the services are being supplied for 3 months or less than 3 months, then it cannot be treated as continuous supply of services. And on this particular point, they may ask question in the exam. So if two persons enter into a contract for providing continuous services by one person to another, and this is for a period less than 3 months or let's say up to 3 months, then it won't be treated as continuous supply of services. So period should be exceeding 3 months. Now let's see the term exempt supply. That is the supplies which will be exempt under GST regime. It is defined under 247. It means supply of any goods or services or both which attract nil rate of taxes or which may be wholly exempt from the tax under section 11 or under section 6 of the Integrated Goods and Service Tax Act, and it includes non-taxable supply. So basically exempt supply will cover three things, that is three supplies will be treated as exempt supply. First, supply which attract nil rate, that is zero rate. Second, which is wholly exempt from the tax. And third, which are non-taxable supply, यानी जिनके ऊपर टैक्स लगता ही नहीं है. इसके ऊपर भी क्वेश्चन आने के चांसेस हैं. Now let's see the definition of the term fixed establishment. It is defined under 250. This is also very important definition. It says that fixed establishment means a place. So there should be a place other than the registered place of business. So registered place of business is not a fixed establishment other than registered place. Let's say this is not registered, which is characterized by sufficient degree of permanence. So it should be a permanent or sufficient degree of permanence should be there, and suitable structure in terms of human and technical resources to supply services or to receive and use services for its own needs. It means the temporary place will not be treated as fixed establishment. Secondly, registered place will not be treated as fixed establishment. So fixed establishment essentially means a place with some permanence and with some structure in terms of human and technical resources to supply or receive or use services for its own needs. Next term defined is the term goods. It is defined under 252. It means every kind of movable property. So immovable property cannot be treated as goods. So every kind of movable property other than money and security. So money and securities will not be treated as goods, but includes actionable claims. ये point बहुत important है, that goods include actionable claims. So it is like unsecured debt will be treated as goods here. Further, it includes growing crops, grass and things attached to or forming part of the land which are agreed to be severed before supply or under a contract of supply. Another small but important definition is of input defined under 259. It means any goods other than capital goods. So first thing is clear. Input will not cover the capital goods, but it will cover any goods used or intended to be used by supplier in the course or furtherance of business. So if this is a supplier, he is supplying the goods to any other person. Now, for this supply, if he is using any goods he is using for such supply of goods, then it will be treated as input, provided these goods should not be capital good. Capital good will not be treated as input. The significance of input here is that whatever GST you have paid while procuring such inputs, you will get input tax credit for such procurement of inputs. For example, suppose these are the inputs you have received and this is the final output you are supplying. While receiving these goods, he has paid 100 rupees of GST, and while supplying this final product, he is supposed to pay 150 rupees of GST. Now, for discharging 150 rupees, he can take the input tax credit of 100 rupees which he has paid at the time of receiving the input. So, that is the significance of the term input. Another definition, input service, similar to input goods, it is defined under 260. It means any service used or intended to be used by supplier in the course or furtherance of business. तो कोई भी supplier है, any supplier, if he is availing any service for the business purpose, then such services which he is availing will be treated as input services. The significance of input service is same as we have seen the significance of input. That means whatever GST paid in case of input service, the supplier will be able to utilize that input tax credit for discharging the GST liability. Now let's see the definition of input service distributor defined under 261. It means office of the supplier of goods or services or both. So a person is supplying goods or services and the office of such supplier which receives tax invoices issued under 31 towards the receipt of input service. So this office is receiving input services and for that it also receives tax invoices, and this office issues the document, prescribed document, for the purpose of distributing the credit of central tax, state tax, integrated tax or union territory tax paid on said services. In short, ये जो supplier है, ये जब कभी भी इनपुट सर्विस अवेल करता है, इसके ऊपर जो भी इसने जीएसटी पे किया है उसका क्रेडिट ये डिस्ट्रीब्यूट करता है अदर persons or to the supplier of goods or services or both having the same permanent account number as of that of the said office. This is very important. ये जो डिस्ट्रीब्यूट कर रहा है जिस भी सप्लायर को ऑफ गुड्स और सर्विसेज, इनका और इस ऑफिस का जो परमानेंट अकाउंट नंबर है, दैट इज पैन अंडर इनकम टैक्स, इट शुड बी द सेम. सो इन सच केस वॉट एवर टैक्स क्रेडिट डिस्ट्रीब्यूटेड बाय दिस ऑफिस टू अदर supplier of goods or services like ABC, they can claim the credit or they can set off this credit with their GST liability. The only condition you have to check that the permanent account number should be same in both the cases, office and the supplier to whom it is distributed. So the effect of this, for example, if he receives input tax credit on input services of, let's say, 1000 rupees, then he can distribute this credit to A, B and C supplier. Let's say 500 credit distributed to A supplier, 200 rupees of credit distributed to B supplier and 300 rupees of credit distributed to C supplier. These supplier who are having the same PAN number as of the office. Now let's see the definition of inward supply defined under 267. It says that in relation to a person, so they are talking about a person, inward supply shall mean receipt of goods or services or both, whether by purchase, acquisition or any other mean, doesn't matter, and with or without consideration. So consideration also doesn't matter. So the bottom line is that whatever receipts of goods or services by this person, whether by purchase, acquisition, other means, with or without consideration, this receipt of goods and services will be treated as inward supply. Similarly, there is a definition of outward supply defined under 283. It also says that in relation to a taxable person. Here they are not just saying person, in relation to a taxable person. The outward supply means supply of goods or services or both, whether by sale, transfer, barter, exchange, license, rental, lease, disposal or any other mode. So the main point is he is supplying the goods or service and it is in the course or furtherance of business. So you will see always that it should be in relation to the business, that is in course or furtherance of business, then it will be treated as outward supply. Now let's see the provision of levy of GST. It says that GST is levied on supply. So first thing is clear that GST will be levied on the supply. Now supply of what? Supply of all goods or services or both except supply of alcoholic liquor for human consumption. Further, you have to note that there are 5 petroleum products like petroleum crude, motor spirit, high-speed diesel, natural gas and aviation turbine fuel. These 5 petroleum products have temporarily been kept out of GST. And GST Council shall decide the date from which they shall be included in the GST. So currently all these 5 petroleum products attract the VAT and not the GST. But remember that this is a temporary basis. GST Council may decide it to include under the GST regime. Similarly, electricity has also been kept out of the GST. इसके ऊपर भी question आ सकता है. Now let's see the dual nature of GST. Here they says that both center as well as the state simultaneously levy the tax on a common base. Common base का मतलब है on a particular value or amount. The center as well as the state will simultaneously levy the tax. The GST levied by center on intrastate supply, that is whatever supply which takes place within the same state, that is intrastate supply of goods or services. The tax levied by center on such intrastate supply will be known as CGST. The tax levied by state or union territory will be called as SGST or UGST. On intrastate supply, there will be 2 types of taxes, one CGST and another is SGST or UTGST. Both these taxes will be levied simultaneously on a common base. Further, you have to note that there will be integrated GST which will be levied and administered by the center on every interstate supply of goods and services. So whenever there is an interstate supply of goods or services, the tax which will be levied will be known as IGST, which will be levied as well as administered by the center. Now let's see the liability under GST. Liability to pay tax, that is the GST, will arise when a person crosses the turnover threshold of 20 lakh rupees. इसका मतलब जब कभी भी आप 20 लाख रुपीस का टर्नओवर का जो थ्रेशोल्ड लिमिट है वो जब आप क्रॉस करते हैं तब आपको लायबिलिटी आएगी जीएसटी की. सो दिस इज द लक्ष्मण रेखा. Once you crosses this Lakshman Rekha, you will be liable to pay the GST. Further, you have to remember this threshold limit of 20 lakh is replaced by 10 lakh limit for northeast and special categories of state. However, there are certain specified cases where this Lakshman Rekha will not work and the person will be liable to pay GST even if the person has not crossed the threshold limit. These cases we will see later on. So you have to remember these threshold limit because question can be asked on these limits. And northeastern and special categories of state, what does it mean? We are going to see just after some time in this video. Now let's see another important provisions related to composition scheme. Under the composition scheme, some relief has been provided to small taxpayers. So this composition scheme is for small taxpayers. And what are the benefits it provides? So there are two benefits. First, concessional rate of tax for small taxpayers. And there is a facility to file the quarterly return instead of monthly return. Now the thing is that who are eligible for composition scheme? So the act says that the registered taxpayer whose aggregate turnover does not exceed 75 lakh rupees in the preceding financial year will be eligible for composition scheme. And this limit of 75 lakh is reduced to 50 lakh rupees for northeastern and special category of states. So whenever the question arises whether taxpayer is eligible for composition scheme or not, you have to check the preceding financial year, and in that preceding financial year you have to check the aggregate turnover of such registered taxpayer. If it is below 75 lakh rupees or 50 lakh rupees as the case may be, then such registered taxpayer will be eligible for composition scheme. Now let's see what do you mean by the northeastern and special categories of states. So it says that northeastern special category of states are Assam, Arunachal Pradesh, Manipur, Meghalaya, Mizoram, Nagaland, Tripura, Sikkim, Himachal Pradesh. You can remember these by AAMMNTSH. Now let's see the definition of the term aggregate turnover. This is very important definition. Question can be asked on this definition, which is defined under 2.6. Aggregate turnover means aggregate value of all taxable supply, excluding the value of inward supply under reverse charge basis. Now reverse charge basis क्या होता है? I will explain. Second, it says that aggregate value of exempted supply. So even exempted supply की value भी आपको consider करनी है for calculating aggregate turnover. Then export of goods or services or both. Then interstate supply will also be considered for calculating the aggregate turnover. Now all these aggregate values of person having the same permanent account number to be computed on all India basis. So it is not just the one person, all the person, यानी सभी person का आपको ये turnover देखना पड़ेगा, and who are having the same permanent account number, and the aggregate value of all the taxable supply, exempted supply, exports and interstate supply of these all person who are having the same permanent account number will be considered to calculate the aggregate turnover. However, please note that the aggregate turnover will exclude the central tax, state tax, union territory tax and integrated tax and cess. So we will take one example to understand this. And before that, try to understand what basically means the inward supply under reverse charge basis. Normally, the person who supply the goods or services is liable to pay the tax. But in certain situation, the person who is receiving the goods or services is liable to pay the tax. So the cases where the person receiving the goods or services is liable to pay the tax is called as reverse charge. So the tax paid by such person under reverse charge, the value of such goods or services will not be included to calculate aggregate turnover. Now let's take one example. Suppose there are two persons, 1 and 2. Both are having the same permanent account number. So you have to consider the value of supply of both these persons together. Now suppose the supply made by these includes taxable supply. Suppose taxable supply is of rupees let's say 50 lakh. Further, there is a exempted supply. Exempted supply, the value of which is let's say 10 lakh rupees. Then there is export of goods or services also, and the value of export of goods and services is let's say 5 lakh rupees. And there is a supply in case of interstate supply. So interstate supply, the value is let's say 5 lakh rupees. Now you have to add all these to find the aggregate turnover. So if we can see, the aggregate turnover is coming 50 plus 1060 plus 55, so 70 lakh rupees. So these persons will be eligible for composition scheme because it is less than 75 lakh rupees. Further, you need not to consider the supply, that is the inward supply, for which they might have paid the tax. So whatever is the value, the question may contain such value of inward supply of let's say 20 lakh rupees for which they have paid the GST. So this 20 lakh rupees of inward supply under reverse charge will not be considered to calculate the annual turnover. Another important thing, you have to exclude central tax, state tax, union territory tax and integrated tax and cess. So all these value what we are considering, it is excluding the CGST, SGST, UT GST or integrated GST. For example, suppose the supply of 50 lakh was basically 50 lakh of supply and 1 lakh rupees of GST. So total 51 lakh. So GST we are not considering. Excluding the GST, the value of supply will be considered. And this is very important. क्वेश्चन आने के चांसेस इसके ऊपर बहुत ज्यादा हैं.